They got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone and affection, I summon and dub it. Cause they got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't.
In my bag, I got a dope guest. But before I get into all that, you know what? You're listening to the Urban Sports Scene on Wole, and let's knock out some particulars. Hey, subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and other podcast platforms. Just search the Urban Sports Scene. Also, make sure you subscribe to our Urban Sports and YouTube channel. Please hit that red subscribe button and also like this video. Don't forget to tweet us at Urban Sports Scene. And hit us up on IG and TikTok at Urban Sports Scene and like our Urban Sports Scene Facebook page. Also join our Urban Sports Scene Facebook group. Search Urban Sports Scene, sports bloggers, sports podcasters, and sports debates. All right. Obviously, you know, stuff went down over the weekend and on Thursday. We're talking about the Washington Commanders NFL draft selections. But in terms of the pregame, here's we have on tap. Host of the Burgundy Zone, Kyle Roenick, will join me to assess the Washington Commanders NFL draft selections. But first, let me introduce my guy, Kyle, on to the show. What is good, Kyle?
What's up, Wole? I do that intro is that goes hard, man.
You know what? I did at first I wanted to go with something real chill. Then I was like, you know what? I'm not a chill person. I can't do that. I can't do chill. But Kyle, before we get into the actual, this discussion of the show in terms of the NFL draft for the Washington Commanders, I know it's been a while since I had you on the show, but I want you to tell our listeners and viewers about your podcast.
Absolutely. You can find us on YouTube, all the audio platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Pods. You could find us to search the Burgundy Zone. I do a lot of film breakdowns, helping with Red Zone in the lab, and so I do a lot of the draft overview. But we just like to have a good time. We talk about any and everything Commanders all year round. Deuce asked me last night if I'm going to be taking a break after this draft, and I looked at him like, "What's a break, man? Of course not."
Have you always been into chopping up film in terms of scouting and things of that sort? Have you always been into it?
So no, it's weird because when I played football, obviously I'm not a big dude. I was bigger when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I played offensive line and defensive line, and I wasn't a starter by any means. I will tell you, I'm trash. But the thing with me is we did a playbook test. The coaches did, and I scored like the second highest of the playbook test, behind a future doctor, a PhD type dude. And so for some reason, just football has always come easy for me, and just being able to see how things work. And I always try to tell people it's really hard to be able to understand football if you don't get the grassroots. If you don't see where, in high school, especially with peewees, you can see how a pass play is designed to go to one read. Yeah. And so there you can see the grassroots of something and how a run play works and what an offensive line is supposed to do. And so that for me, it's something that even going back to high school where I knew where every single position on every play, what they were supposed to be doing. And so it wasn't until we started doing the pod and then we wanted to do draft overviews, and I started watching film and I was like, dude, I really enjoy doing this. In that first go around, I predicted Patrick Queen to the Steelers. I thought that was a shoe-in fit for them.
I love it. Look at
I was all over Justin Jefferson in that pre-draft. I think in February or March, I was saying there's a good chance that he could be the next Odell Beckham. And what I meant by that was, with just such a loaded wide receiver room, this cat could have the opportunity to be a superstar. It just he didn't have that many chances to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's something that came into fruition for him. And I've always said that Justin Jefferson is always going to be my trophy that I have to be able to say I've got something right.
That's nothing to really, that's something big to kind of go ahead and say clout chase with. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm kind of impressed with that. I won't even hold you. I kind of into that. You called out Justin Jefferson to be the guy that we see today. It's
funny. At LSU, it was hard for him because I said in that tweet, I was like, there's so many cooks in the kitchen. It's hard to really see what his ceiling is.
Yeah.
Because the ball's being distributed so much. But every time he gets the ball, something amazing happens. And I feel like this cat. And so I even said before that, I was like, I'm going to cry if the Eagles get him because I don't want to have to face him twice a year. And look what ended up happening.
Yeah, and it's one thing about like LSU wide receivers. I feel like they're always like NFL ready, especially at that particular point in time where it just seemed like route running. Obviously, like hands. They were just when they got to the league, they were pretty much already set up for success.
Absolutely, dude. And every single one has really blossomed. And I know that Alabama had a good run for a little while, and it also but the LSU guys have really taken a stand. And look, Ohio State, we know that's wide receiver you. You got to really carry there. And but that being said, the LSU guys are so incredibly talented that they do make an argument.
They do.
I know it's crazy to say that because Ohio State just pumps out wide receiver talent, but I'm just honest, LSU does do a pretty good job.
I agree. I think they do a very good job. And the thing about it is when they're Ohio State has a bunch of it's consistent, right? Like they're very consistent. And even the lower, obviously, we're looking at Terry McLaurin, right? Even you would say that like the lower level receiver from Ohio State tend to they'll have a really good NFL career, like because they're just Noah Brown, very good NFL career, right?
Right.
But when you look at LSU receivers, it's like it's either I'm not gonna lie to you, it's either your top 10-ish or you're just whatever. But but when you hear of them, you know they're one of them.
Absolutely. It's almost like Ohio State has a high floor for all their wide receivers, and LSU has a very high ceiling, but it's not but also a very low floor, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just but when if you think about some of the top receivers in the game right now, you're thinking of the guys from LSU, to be honest with you. Jamar Chase. You already named it, you already talked about Jefferson. It's just they're out. You look at the kid now in Jacksonville, you know what I mean? Like neighbors. So it just speaks for itself.
Brian Thomas, with Jacksonville, Malik Neighbors himself, obviously Jaden. Like everyone talked about with Jaden Daniels. Oh, well, he had those wide receivers in college, and you're putting him at Washington where they only have Terry McLaurin. And I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly because we can't have a quarterback here that needs to rely on top tier talent. So that's a really good starting spot for him. But that being said, if it wasn't for Jaden Daniels, would Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas be them to be drafted as high as they were? And I do think that was a very good combination that LSU had, and everyone has had success so far.
No, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. All right, so let's get into this actual NFL draft. We'll talk. Well, I mean, in terms of the Washington had made some moves. There was a guy that I really wanted Washington to get, but they didn't get him. And folks know I've been really depressed about it. Being a Michigan fan, obviously, I thought there was an opportunity for Washington to get my guy Will Thomas. But let me put up the actual graphic I have in terms of the guys that were drafted. Here we go. There we go, buddy. Overlay. There we go. All right, here we go. All right, first round with the 29th pick, Josh Connerly, Oregon tackle. Second round, guy who I like, Trey Amos, cornerback, Ole Miss. He grew on me. I won't lie. I won't say like I was in love with him off the rip after he was drafted. Fourth round pick, Jalen Lane out of Virginia Tech, wide receiver. I can see you already get hyped with that, Kyle. Sixth round pick, linebacker, UCLA, Kane. How you say his name?
Medrano,
right? Medrano, excuse me. And also seven round pick, Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt, running back out of Arizona. All right, let's get into it. So let's go with the first pick. When Washington drafted a tackle from Oregon, they drafted Connerly. What were your thoughts of that pick? Did you like it in terms of value? Because there's a lot of guys that would slip in the later rounds, and folks were kind of enamored with to say, oh, this is an opportunity for us to get this particular person. Personally, I was like that with Will Johnson. I was like, oh, this is a chance to get Will Johnson at that point, at that spot. But what were your thoughts when Washington made that selection?
Well, at first, if you asked my wife and what my immediate reaction was, it wasn't good because I was telling her about the edge guys at that point. But like for me, just being an evaluator, I don't like to say scouting or anything like that because I feel like that's anointing something that doesn't need to be anointed. But just evaluating, like I was very keen on the edge class. I did a lot of work on this edge class. But the crazy thing was with Josh Connerly, I had this argument originally when everyone was talking about Andrew Wiley going into guard. And I said that scares the living heck out of me. You need to be able to have Brandon Coleman at guard to be able to go against these defensive tackles. And the crazy thing was I had uploaded a film breakdown of Josh Connerly the day before the draft, not knowing, like, and it's just weird how that worked out for us. But with Josh Connerly, what you see on this play, on the screenplay, very light on his feet, man. And this is somebody who works on pulls and in the trap game as well. If you go back to some of these games, he's not going to give you highlights to where he's bulldozing guys like Anthony Belton against Tennessee. You're not going to see that sort of stuff. But he is somebody who's just going to come in and do his job, keep everything quiet for his quarterback. And that's evident by how he did against Abdul Carter, keeping him to 0 sacks. And then the other one was JT Tuamulu from Ohio State, who the year before, I said early on the process, if you're going O-line, Joe Alt is the pick. And everyone yelled at me saying, Olu Fashanu. And I said, don't make me upload this film breakdown of what JTT did to Olu Fashanu. And inevitably I did. But Olu fell. And obviously you saw Olu needed a year to kind of get his feet under him. I think Josh Connerly off bat is better than Olu Fashanu. There is no There is no reason for him to make it to 29. Specifically because of how he did against Abdul Carter, how he did against JTT, what he's able to do. Not only is he a very good pass blocker, being light on his feet, having the strength to be able to take guys around the carousel, as I like to call it, but in the run game, he is somebody that on those pulls, you feel very good about being able to do his job. He's not going to blow you away with the highlights, but he's going to get his job done. And what this does is this slides Brandon Coleman into right guard. This now creates a competition at left guard until Cosme comes back. And I have the full confidence in Cosme, him playing left tackle at Texas in college. He can easily move to left guard when he comes back. He knows this playbook. He knows what the guards are asked to do. It's much less with Brandon Coleman. You don't want to move that around. But I'm very interested in creating very good production at that right guard spot so Connerly is not on an island in his rookie year. He needs some strength. He needs some mass next to him. All the respect in the world to Andrew Wiley. I need Brandon Coleman there at right guard and let them compete at left guard because Tunzel and Badass will make that left guard better. And I can have full confidence in that.
So my question is to you, like, do you, because, all right, I feel like, all right, so initially in the draft process, when I heard, and this is the last year, when I heard that Brandon Coleman was going to be the starting left tackle, I was like, ugh, right. And then when I went to a couple practices at training camp, and I was speaking to a lot of reporters, and a lot of the reporters said, like, no, Brandon Coleman looks good at left tackle. He's going to be good. He looks mean. He's going to be the starting left tackle, right? So the season starts, and obviously he started off injured, and he's kind of in spot duty in the first couple games. But then he got his opportunity to actually start games, and he played well at left tackle. To me, I'm not going to act like I thought he played well. I felt like did. A lot of people were going to say, like, well, yeah, that he tampered off towards the end of the season. I would argue that had to deal with that would have to deal with him being banged up a little bit.
Absolutely.
But I felt like, just like we talk about how we talk about Connerly versus Abdul Carter, we can all say the same thing about what we saw with Coleman against one of the best defensive players in all football, in Myles Garrett, right? And how he played against Myles Garrett. So my question to you is, do you feel like Connerly's automatically going to be penciled in as the right tackle, or does he compete? Because Coach did say that Brandon Coleman would be moved to right tackle. Will those two compete at that position, and to see who's going to actually play guard? The person who loses that position will play guard, or is it set in stone to you that Brandon Coleman will be moved to guard regardless?
I think the Cosme injury kind of makes things difficult in that sense. But I do agree with you that, look, I said it last night on our podcast. If Dan Quinn wore a hard hat for work, he'd have a sticker saying compete on it. Yeah. And he wants to be able to have that, right? And so I would imagine that Brandon Coleman could easily do that, start at right tackle, be able to compete with Connerly. Yeah. But you have to look at Connerly's makeup, right? 6'5", 311 pounds. Brandon Coleman is sitting at 330 pounds. And when you're going against the defensive tackles that we have to face, and Dexter Lawrence and the Giants defensive line, the Eagles in their defensive line, you have to have strength, mass, and athleticism in the inside. And this is what my tweet was about Andrew Wiley after he restructured his deal. You have to have those three things in the interior to go against those defensive tackles. Does that sound like Wiley? And no, it doesn't. It sounds like Brandon Coleman. And that's why I, as much as I love the idea of the compete, I want to be able, because our big issue last season, Wole, I know that you cover, people that cover the Ravens, and with a very fine eye, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We could not run the football on them. Their average that's last season at that point was like 60 yards a game, and we had like 61 overall in that game. We against good defensive fronts, we struggled to be able to run the ball fundamentally well. And that's something that by adding Connerly to that right side, who's 311, he fits that kind of tackle mold, that athleticism, being able to move in space. But then you add Brandon Coleman the inside, that might actually be able to help you move the ball in the trenches against these very good fronts. Because like we saw in the Super Bowl, what Kansas City will do to you, they'll rush 4, they'll drop 7, and they'll say run against our DTs. Most teams can't because of how good they are. Well, this allows you the possibility of possibly doing that and forcing Philly to have to dedicate extra rushers to stop your run game.
I think that's something the team that you mentioned. That's like the team you have to
absolutely
construct your team against that team, right? And to your point, Philly, it's the interior. That's what scares you in terms of their defense, their interior, those D tackles and whatnot. So I do agree that you do have to set up your offensive line to kind of be able to stand up against those individuals. But so does it concern you? Because you mentioned it, that he doesn't have the wild blocks, right? In terms of physicality, he's going to have to put on some weight. Does it concern you that he's a little light? Does that concern you right now if he's going to step into a situation where he can arguably be the starting right tackle, knowing that the Cowboys got meaner with Donovan Azaruku. And obviously Abdul Carter in New York, and then you're having combinations now in terms of even like obviously Cowboys with Micah on the other side. So now you have like dynamic pass rushers on each side in terms of what Washington's going to have to go up against.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's a concern. They did a very good job. But at the same breath, we just drafted the kryptonite to Abdul Carter.
I love it.
And so I love the idea of them putting Abdul Carter on that side. Look, you can make the choice. You can either go with Tunsil or you can go with Connerly, who has experience in the past against you. Of course, it's going to be a concern. And the one thing about Connerly is that he does allow, when a bull rush is getting into his chest, he does get off balance, get knocked into the quarterback, not allowing a sack or a hold or anything like that. He still keeps his body as the barrier between him and the rusher and the quarterback, which is what you're supposed to be doing. But I would say that at all the NFL guys, except for Emmanuel Forbes, typically will transform their body once they get here. Once they get under that meal plan, no disrespect to Oregon and their kind of makeup. I'm sure they do that same thing. But they're going to be very invested in making sure that he's bulking up a little bit more. And based on his athleticism, dude, how light he is on his feet, he could add a little bit more weight and strength and still not be able to lose many steps in that regard. I think that this is a growing process, of course, but Connerly has the makeup and the resume to say you feel very comfortable with him at right tackle.
What would you say is his comp? Who is his comp?
Oh, dude, I was thinking about this today, and that's a really hard one. I don't want to go off the limb and say Chris Samuels, but like with Samuels, the only reason I say Samuels is because Samuels wasn't ever regarded as like a mauler, right? Like as somebody that was going to be stellar in these boxes. But he just did his job. And so if I'm going to say anybody, I'll say that just based on the game style of him just doing his job, being that big, massive person and not allowing the quarterback to get hit and regarded as one of the best.
How would he compare? Because he sounds similar, but he sounds better. So I'm not going to put this is not shade to him. He sounds similar to like the makeup of what people were trying to make out the kid that the Cowboys drafted last year.
Tyler Smith.
No, not last. No, I'm from Oklahoma. The kid from Oklahoma wasn't Smith.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my,
you know what I'm talking about.
That was my boy.
Because a lot of people wanted him here.
Yeah, I wanted him here.
Yeah,
Harrison.
Yeah, is it Harrison? Is that his name? He was playing tackle. He got benched because he was supposed to start and he got benched. I can't. His name is not coming.
Did he play left tackle or right tackle?
He started and they benched him. I want to say he was supposed to be the left tackle. He was supposed to be.
I'm pulling up their depth chart right now because now you got me thinking. Yeah. Tyler Guyton.
Thank you. That's it.
Yes, I really like Tyler Guyton.
It's
and
Guyton.
That's a good pull. That's a good pull by you because Guyton was the guy I was all on top of and I absolutely loved. He's very similar in that kind of sense. And I think Darnell Wright is another one that you could plug in from Tennessee that's now with Chicago. Yeah. It's funny when Chicago fans said they had a horrible offensive line last year. I laugh at that, but at the end all be all, I think Connerly has the makeup way better than these other guys do, because coming out with Guyton, he didn't really have the reps against the top tier rusher like that Abdul Carter tape, because Abdul Carter has a wide variety of rush moves.
Oh
and
my gosh,
the good compare and contrast for Abdul Carter and Josh Connerly is what Abdul Carter did against Ariante Ursary when they played Minnesota. He beat Ariante Ursary to the inside a lot. And that's the one area that Ariante is not the best in. He's a little bit more of a mauler than Connerly, but he gets beat to the inside a lot. That did not happen against Connerly. And that kind of shows the makeup of his game of being able to play outside and then also be able to stop things on the inside. Maybe a little bit of penetration, but he does not allow easy, clean pass rushes.
That's good. So because I do like an athletic tackle. Like I actually prefer, and especially for Cliff Kingsbury's offense, I prefer an athletic tackle than a quote unquote mauler. You know what I mean? Obviously you want a guy with a mean streak. I'm not saying that you can be athletic and have some slight of a mean streak. No, so I want folks to say I want my left tackle, my tackle to be soft, right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I do want some athleticism, because I'm kind of like spoiled too in the same regard, because I like with Trent, I never like having an athletic tackle like that move around, and he was a mauler too at the same time. But knowing what you can do with pulling and other things you can do in the zone running scheme, like it's nothing like having an athletic tackle. So I'm hoping he kind of pans out to be that guy. But let's go to a guy, the cornerback from Ole Miss, Trey Amos. Like your thoughts on that pickup?
So Trey Amos was somebody I watched early on in the process, and it was when I was like drinking through a fire hose. But the one thing that after rewatching him, and you watch him, this is one of the best plays that he makes, because this is the instinct in zone. So you see him go back to the corner of the end zone. He reads that crossing route underneath and jumps up in front of it. And then also he has that man press capability. But I think that he is the best corner in this draft class at the catch point, Wole. He has 31.25-inch arms, very long arms for a corner. But you'll see here that whenever that ball is thrown, his hand is in the way. He does a very good. There's another rep at the corner of the end zone. I forget. I think it's South Carolina that they were playing against, where he's just reading the wide receiver's eyes. It's not until the wide receiver looks up for the ball in the end zone that he puts his hands up and swats it out the way. And you and I both know that is a veteran move for a corner in the NFL.
Yes.
And not even including what in college. And so I think he is miles ahead of that. He shows the instincts in zone. He has the arm length to be able to knock the ball away at the catch point. Had 13 pass breakups this year, and I think that's a small number compared to what I saw on film. 3 interceptions as well, and 2 of those interceptions came on those zone concepts where he's baiting the quarterback into the throw, reading him the whole time, seeing that crosser, or it was a wheel route, the other one, or a corner route that he was playing cover 3. It was a corner route that they were trying to bait him inside. He just watches the quarterback, goes back and catches the ball like a center fielder. And so this is somebody, to be honest, just like Josh Connerly, he should not have been there at 61. Based off after rewatching him and what he strapped down Kyron Lacey and did it in a good way. And so I think that this is somebody that maybe doesn't have the top tier pedigree against the best wide receivers had to offer. Like, I don't think they played Ohio State to be able to really gauge how he does. But he even played Mason Taylor well. There was a couple go balls that they threw to Mason Taylor on Trey Amos, and he knocked those and swatted those out the way. And Mason Taylor has at least a couple inches on him, and he still went up there, and his hand is higher than Mason Taylor's. He's just very good at the catch point, and I think that that's somebody you could really bank on at the next level. The one backpedal weakness you could say is that he's not a very willing tackler at all times. Like, he's not going to go out of his way to be physical in that sense of coming up in the run game, but he's not shying away from it. He's not going to be he's not D'Angelo Hall-esque, but it's very much it's very much more so of like, if he needs to be, if it's that one-on-one, he's going to come up, make the tackle, but he's not going to be an overly physical guy in the run game if there's anything to really have a problem with. But right now, he is a very instinctual, and the one thing I take away from watching his film, he is very confident. It does not matter what's being thrown at him. You see the chill in his game where he's just playing his game, and it doesn't really matter what the other team does.
I know. I like your breakdown. Hold on. This somebody's throwing shade to me, so I had to make sure I respond to this. Well, Taj, look, no one's still better than Will Johnson to me. Period. So I don't care. Will Johnson shut down Aduze. There
was one play that ruined Will Johnson for me. That as soon as I saw that play, I was like, I'm out on Will Johnson. And Wole, I know you love him, but
I
it was
love him.
against USC when Jacarius Marks ran him over, and I was like, okay.
Oh, physical. You talking about look? I'm not going to lie to you. Corners and tackle is not a thing for me. I'm not going to lie to you. Deion taught me that when I was younger. Deion taught me this a long time
That's
ago.
fair. But
Corners
my
and
only
tackle
point
ain't
was,
okay.
if I'm going to have a first-round corner, I've learned this from Forbes. If you're
Yeah.
going to have a first-round corner, you got to be opportunistic on the ball, but you have to be willing to come and make a tackle on a running back. And
It's
obviously,
hard.
he was willing, but he was a speed bump that day, and I was like, oh no.
I'm just telling you. I'm just saying, like, track record. I'm just saying. We talked about like being tested. He got to see Marvin Harrison Jr. He got to see all the Ohio State receivers. He went even out of conference. He went out of conference in a big game when Mikey played well. He shut down the dude that everybody was worried about. Like, he shut down the guy in Chicago who was one of the better rookie receivers in all of the NFL last year.
I'll say that he had the best break on the football. I mean, when he saw that thing, that step and go, I mean, his closing speed was obviously there.
Yeah. But I want to talk about this kid, though. I do like this kid. So that's for you, Taj. I just want to make sure I address that. I saw LOL and I knew what you were talking about. So anyway, but I wanted this kid, like, I won't even lie. So I came into this situation when he was drafted. I was so angry about the first round. I won't even lie to you. I was angry about the first round. Like, I was like, oh, this should be Will Johnson. And then so I saw, you're going to get a corner? Like, I was already mad. Like, I didn't care what this kid did. I didn't even want to watch film on him. So when I had to do this, like, obviously you prepare for the show. Then I'm like looking at his clips. I'm looking at video. I'm like, to what Kyle is talking about. I was highly impressed. I won't even lie. I was highly impressed. It's the physicality. That's what I like about it. I think that in terms of, again, it's about fit, right? We're in a Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr. defense. And when I think Dan Quinn defense, I think Seattle, I think big corners, I think lengthy corners, man press, too deep. That's what I think in terms of not letting people off and just being physical at the point of attack when you're talking about playing against a wide receiver. And he fits it to me. And to your point, like, he's got good instincts, PBUs. He's really good at that. He may not be like like a corner that you deem like take it to the house or playmaking in terms of getting the pick and taking it all the way. But in terms of consistent play, I think he's that type of guy. So I like the pick. I like the pick a lot, to be honest with you. I'm with you. I think him being drafted to 61 is pretty odd. I think he's better than 61.
Yep.
So I think they had really good value for him.
And just like with Connerly, when we talked about Brandon Coleman having that competition at right tackle, look, you could throw Andrew Wiley in there too if you wanted to, if you're feeling spicy. But just like with that, Mikey Samerstill and Trey Amos are going to battle for that outside corner spot. Yeah. I think Mikey has earned that opportunity. He blossomed outside. The one issue with Mikey last season was they were playing him at slot early on, and teams were running at him because of his size. There's nothing against Mikey, but if you just by like scientific and natural means, if you put a 300-pound guy on somebody the size of Mikey, more times than not, they're going to get blocked. And so they had to figure something out. And it really proved dividends in the season when they moved him outside. Obviously, that Cincinnati opening start wasn't the best thing for Mikey, but that was a trial by fire. Yeah, and he responded, dude. Yeah. And I think he's earned that spot to compete with Trey Amos. And I'm really excited to see how that pans out because iron sharpens iron, man.
I'll say this about – all right, I'm going to ask you this question because this situation reminds me of – like, all right, San Francisco, when they had Carlos Rogers, who used to play for the then Redskins. And so Carlos would start outside, but when they went 3 wide receiver set, he would move inside. And then, whoever would be on the outside. I can't forget who would be on the outside, but they would switch it up. So if they go 2 base, Carlos is the starter. When they go on the outside, when they go 3, he's inside. Do you feel like that could be used with Mikey and Amos? Like, if they go 2 base, they will start with Mikey, and then when they go 3 set or whatever, then Mikey will go inside and Amos will automatically be outside.
Yeah, honestly, and with his arm length for Trey Amos having 31.25-inch arms, how he played against Mason Taylor, even if they put a tight end out wide, that's why I'd be dedicating to it, just because of how his arm length is able to contend with those tight ends and their length and their height. I think, Trey, you'd feel very good about that. I love Mikey Samerstill, but I don't think putting him on a tight end is probably the best idea ever. Not at all. Yeah, great. But to your point, I think that Trey Amos has done a very good job in zone where you can almost deploy that kind of 3 cornerback system where he's almost playing like a safety at times. If you want to do like a quarter 4, you want to do cover 3, you could always play that way with him. But I agree that the height is and the arm length is what's really intriguing about him. And on top of that, he ran a 4.43.
Yes.
So it's not like he's a slow guy, but he is somebody that you feel very comfortable with outside. And I think you want to put your best 3 out there. And so I would imagine that based on like last year when we came into the season, they had more safeties than they had corners. And so we knew that they were going to be utilizing those 3 safeties a lot. I would imagine this time around, they're going to be using a lot more corners on the field rather than having to weigh in on the safeties, because it definitely seems like it has flip-flopped from last season.
Are you surprised they didn't draft the safety?
Yes.
Me too.
It hated what killed me, Wole, is that the 2 guys that I loved were Antoine Powell-Ryland from my Virginia Tech and my boy Andrew Makuba from Texas.
Yeah, Texas was good, yeah.
Philly picked up both of them. And so I was like, it's going to suck. It's going to be horrible having for me to acknowledge that they suck now because I hyped them up all draft process. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, Philly tends to do that. Philly does Philly stuff. I don't want to get into that, but they do Philly stuff.
Philly stuff.
Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah, I know, Coach. I know you're there. I know you're there. So let's go to the well, I guess this would be your favorite, Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
The wide receiver, speedster and explosive. And he's actually, what I like about him, and I'm talking about Lane, he is tough. You talk about Lane for me real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jalen Lane, 4.34 40, 11 broad jump, a 40-inch vertical, very explosive athlete. The only issue for him is that he was underutilized at Virginia Tech based on quarterback play and offensive game plan. But working in the middle of the field, he is a very good route runner. If you're a wide receiver, played flag, regular football, you know how hard it is to run an out and in, right? To be able to get that corner, that secondary guy to shake off of you, especially if you have to plant your foot and go. He's somebody that makes that transition very seamless and easy. His route running is very good. There was one play against Vanderbilt on D. Ricky Wright, who's actually being transferred to a linebacker in the pros, from what I hear. And he shook him out of his shoes. And there's a couple plays where they have a slot corner on him, and the slot corner doesn't get a hand on him. And the only people that are tackling him is the safeties. And one of the best plays that he had at Virginia Tech was a 1st and 22. They throw a screen pass to Jalen Lane, and he picks up the first down. And it's not just because he's faster than everyone else. He actually used his vision to stay behind the blockers, to navigate through the defenders, to be able to get the yardage for the first down. I think that is somebody, and you're talking about like that with Cliff Kingsbury. He can't wait. And Jalen Lane is somebody that you work to find ways to get involved. Like they used him on end arounds at Virginia Tech, which we know from the Diamond Brown last season that Cliff Kingsbury is not going to shy away from that play.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, but first and foremost, he's going to be a contributor on punt returns. That speed, that explosion off bat is going to be able to flip the field for this offense, and making Jaden's job easier is objective number 1. And that's why they went and got Tunsil. That's why they drafted Connerly in the first round. And that's why they got Jalen Lane to be able to help him, not only on the special team side of it, but as a wide receiver, that's somebody you would feel very confident with as a backup to Deebo Samuel. And if not Deebo, then you could also use him outside as well. We saw what he did to Darian Porter at the Senior Bowl. And Darian Porter from Iowa State, he's a corner who's a former wide receiver. He runs a 4.3. He's a track guy. He runs fast. And Jalen Lane put the burners on him. Jalen Lane couldn't catch up to him. It wasn't for a bad ball. He had to slow down for it and catch a touchdown on him. Just going to show you, Jalen Lane is a speedster. I call him Jalen the Fast Lane. And he's a dude that your defense is going to have to keep an eye on once he gets the ball rolling. I do think he's going to contribute on offense this year. It might not be a crazy amount, but what you're really going to see is the special teams aspect of him.
So, yeah, because James is asking, Lane starting slot. Now, I don't think he'll be starting the slot. But I do think – do you think he'll start a slot?
I'm not 100% sure about that. I do think that they covet the big wide receiver on the outside. And so I could see a rotation of Noah Brown, of KJ Osborne, and then Michael Gallup outside, and then using Jalen Lane as the backup to Deebo at the slot. Because in my personal opinion, Wole, I think the Eagles are a very good example of this. You build your team based on, are you comfortable at every single starting spot with your backup? And we saw that with the Eagles last year. They lost some guys and they didn't miss a beat.
True.
And that's what you're trying to replicate as a team building standpoint. And so with Jalen Lane being the backup to Debo, you feel very good about that just for the future speaking, but also for the time being. And honestly, I want to tell Jalen Lane, just like every other position we talked about, compete, earn that job, earn the ability to get snaps on the offensive side of the ball. And that's something Jahan Dotson was not okay with doing. And
no,
so
he wasn't.
Nope. So let's make sure that you earn your spot. And I wholeheartedly believe that his ability alone and measurables, but the fact that he was underutilized at Virginia Tech, I'm sure this is a kid that's biting at the bit to compete, man.
What is it? All right. So what does this mean for like a Luke McCaffrey?
He's got to compete. He's got to earn it. So I do think he has to get a little bit bigger, thicker in that kind of regard. He is kind of a thinner guy. He did really well on kick returns, and obviously he has an eye for the blocking game, being able to navigate through defenders and blocks and everything like that. But everyone will go back to the data, and they'll say his separation against corners were one of the best on the team. He just wasn't throwing the ball. But then that begs the question, Wole, why wasn't he being thrown the ball? There is a trust issue there.
There you go.
And so you have to earn that trust. You have to earn that ball thrown to you. And so same thing for all these rookies, and same with Luke McCaffrey, same with Ben Sinnott as well, and Jordan McGee. You got to earn your spot. You got to earn those reps, man.
Thank you for saying that. I didn't want to say it because everyone thinks I'm a Luke hater. And you said it for him. And like, you didn't hate, you said facts. Like that's my thing about Luke McCaffrey. Like, I even acknowledge, like, I'm not gonna lie, going into the season for Luke, it was like, to me, it was like more of a, I had to think of, my thought process was nepotism. That was like my first type of like my thought process. Won't even lie. But then like he kind of grew on me because I liked his toughness. Because I'm gonna always lean on toughness, period.
Right.
Like that's my thing. I'm gonna lean on toughness. So he grew on me. And then, but I didn't like the argument, like, so it'd always be like he's getting open. I did see him open. I did see him open a few times. I'm not gonna act like I didn't see him open, because it came when I saw him open, it was like different. Like it's the beginning. I call it the beginning of Jaden, where obviously as a young quarterback, it's hard to see the whole field.
Yeah,
and because he was even missing Terry, who was open at times. So I just kind of chalked it up to like a rookie being a rookie. Like he's open, but yeah, he's not. It's gonna be hard for a young quarterback to find everybody.
Yep.
Then, like you said, as the season progressed, like you said, like you can pull all the metrics that he's open, but he still ain't getting the ball. So there's something with that. And to me, Jaden's is a freewheeling passer. Like he'll throw the ball to you if you're open. To me, like Noah Brown was getting work. Look, Olamide dropped how many passes, and he was still getting touches.
And it begs the question with Jamison Crowder, to your point. Jamison Crowder was not playing until the second half of the season. He gets on the field, and all of a sudden, he's exploding with production. And so it just begs the question what the kind of underlying is there. But I will say Luke McCaffrey did transition to a wide receiver later on in his career at college, and he's obviously growing into it still, of course. But adding Jalen Lane really forces Luke McCaffrey to have to get to work. You don't have much time. You got to get after it. And I know that family is very competitive at heart, and I know that he's going to respond well, which is only great things for this offense.
No, I agree. I think he'll get better. I do think he'll get better. I'm with you. I feel like at the end of the day, like, and this is one thing I think about in football, period. You talk about and that happened towards the end of the season. They tried him out at kickoff return. And he did well. Like he didn't do good. He did well. Like he was one of the. To me, I would have felt comfortable with him doing it when, say, Eckler went down. Like I would have been comfortable with him doing it. So going into the offseason, having that type of confidence, I don't care what it is, to be successful in anything, having that type of confidence going into the next season, you should be. I think you'll be better. He'll be better off overall as a football player going into the next season. So I'm with you. And just like you said, like, the mentality of that family, like they're just a hard-nosed, competitive family. Christian was that way. You doubt Christian, and he shows you what time it was. So I totally agree. So I totally agree with you. All right. So in terms of the other two draft picks, what are your thoughts on them in terms of the kid from UCLA, the linebacker, and also the running back from Arizona?
The Kane Medrano was kind of a head scratcher for me when I saw it, and I was able to watch him a little bit because he had, I think, 50 solo tackles this year. a handful of sacks, had an interception and a return for a touchdown. He's also similar to Luke McCaffrey, as a former wide receiver convert to linebacker. I think he was 6'3", 222 pounds. He ran a 4.46, 36-inch vert. So the explosion is there from that kind of weight standpoint. But at his best, it's when he's rushing the passer. And so I love the idea of him as the backup to Frankie Louvu and a special teams contributor on day one. You brings to mind like Nick Bellore, right?
Yeah.
Just because you're not starting doesn't mean that you can't be influential and productive for this football team by other means. And that's what I think for Kane Medrano. And obviously the experience with Ken Norton at UCLA is going to pay dividends for him and Ken Norton, because they know each other. Obviously, Adam Peters from UCLA has very good ties to that college, and is going to be able to find out information that he needs. But the tackling is an issue, and that's something like these are easy, routine tackles that he's missing, and that's something that can be cleaned up. And I'm sure Ken Norton will be able to do that. But we have learned from linebackers in the past, you don't have much time. You got to be able to clean that stuff up if you want to be able to contribute on this football team. But I think off bat, you're looking at a very good speed rusher. Running backs have a hard time picking him up when he's blitzing because of how big and how fast he is. If you watch it, as soon as he plants that foot and go, you can see that wide receiver speed in a flash. He's in the quarterback's stomach, dude. And as much so as the tackling is an issue, of course, but there's other avenues and strengths that he has that you can really go towards. I know everyone's talking about the coverage ability, which is fantastic. Jamin Davis was a fantastic coverage linebacker. And we saw that at Kentucky going against Kyle Pitts. He was able to shut down Kyle Pitts for the most part. But what did it do at the NFL level? Not all that much.
There you go.
So I want to be able to make sure that we get those tackles solidified for him. And if he is brought onto the field, it's going to probably most likely in the pass rush situations.
Gotcha. I mean, 6-round linebacker. I'm like, you'll probably be a practice squad dude. Like, man, if I groom you, hopefully. I mean, because there's so many guys they do like from last year they didn't even crack the field due to injury.
Jordan McGee.
They love Jordan McGee. That's a fact. They are in love with Jordan McGee. I know that they love Jordan McGee. And then even the kid they moved from state that's playing was gonna Hampton.
Don Hampton.
He's gonna be a linebacker next year.
I call him Van Wilder.
What?
Because he played at Washington for like 5 seasons, like 5-6 seasons. Like he was there for a long time, and I like the idea of him moving to linebacker. But in the same breath, like when you talk about that, it's like, okay, well, who are you taking off the field then?
Yeah,
because you're not taking Bobby off. You're not taking Frankie off. Do you want to take Mikey off the field? Do you want to take Quan off the? No. Yeah. So you got to earn those reps, and just like with Luke McCaffrey and the others, you got to earn it. And I'm happy that this staff is not scared of moving positions if it doesn't work out immediately. And I think that they're very smart in doing that, just to be able to see what a guy can do. And we'll see what Dom looks like in the preseason.
Yeah, I'm with you. So what about the running back from Arizona? What are your thoughts on Merritt?
So my first thought is that somebody from New Mexico definitely called the NCAA after they played him, because he played at New Mexico. Yeah. He transfers to Arizona. His first game at Arizona is against New Mexico. He rushes for over 100 yards on them, scores a touchdown, and then afterwards he's ruled ineligible. Somebody made a call. But the production, like if this is fantasy football, this is similar to Matt Stafford going to the Rams the first year with Cooper Kupp and company. Gotcha. It's saying, well, they didn't have much production pre-Matt Stafford, right? So, but you're adding something in here. Something could explode here. And that's what it's like with Ja'Cory. And because with him, his ineligibility really pushed him down boards. So the production out of that running back situation is very good for you in the 7th round. And this is what I said from the get-go. I know this is a loaded running back class, but I know that we're not going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles by drafting a running back in round 1. Just being perfectly honest with you guys right now.
Okay.
So the fact that they went in the back end of loaded running back class, they trust Anthony Lynn and company to see the traits that they like. He's slippery, he's explosive, and he's underrated in the passing game. I think it's somebody that's going to be able to contribute in all 3 phases, and it's just another chess piece for Cliff Kingsbury to move around the field. As a 7th rounder, you can't go wrong with it. You're happy about adding, because I don't think this fan base would have been able to contain themselves if we didn't get a running back in this draft class.
No, they wouldn't. But
No.
you think they're happy with it being a 7th round pick?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because
Honestly, well, like, we know this fan base. They're happy with it.
That's why I'm laughing. It's the truth.
They'll be happy with anything, really. They just want to know that they're right. And everyone's been clamoring to replace Brian Robinson. And so as soon as we drafted Ja'Cory, like, the first thing they're saying is, "Oh, this guy's gonna be able to replace Brian Robinson." I've been right the whole time. It's like, wait a minute, man.
No, you know what? Because this is my thing about. You're right, though. This is my thing about the fan base. I won't even lie to you. It's because, like, everybody that gets drafted, it's like it's automatically better than the next person. Like, it's automatic already. And I'm like, and people think, like, I'm hate. Like, that's the reason why I bring up our friends. That's the reason why I bring up Brandon Coleman compared to, like, Connerly, right?
Right.
It's because now it's like you, and I hope Connerly pans out. So it's not a knock on him. I'm hoping that he pans out. But it's like you act like for a rookie, Brandon Coleman was terrible.
Absolutely not.
That's what I'm saying is, like, it's not a Garrett. So I even had this question. I posed this to people because, again, it goes. Don't forget, this is the same dude that when he went up against Myles Garrett, he looked good, right? It's the same dude, right? So I even asked folks. I was like, if let's say Connerly has a season like Coleman, does that mean he's that are you upset at the draft pick then? And I'm like, and somebody actually, like, tweeted out and said it'd be a bust. And I was like, huh? Like, I sat there and I thought to myself, like, Coleman didn't play horrible. He was actually decent to me. So how would that be a bust if he played to the level of a Brandon Coleman?
Yeah, with Coleman, it's like his body type, it does fit with both positions at guard and tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He does have his weaknesses, as Connerly, of course. Yeah. But the one reason why I say I want Coleman in at guard is specifically out of respect for Coleman and the competition that we're going to have to face. It's not out of fear, but it's out of knowing what has to be done to be able to move those big boys out of the way. And that's Andrew Wiley. As much as I love him, that Pokemon loving guy, I need some muscle in the interior and some big athletic ability. And that's Brandon Coleman to me. Them bringing in Nate Herbig is another example of that. 6'4", 330-pound guy. He as well as somebody that's going to compete for that guard spot. But it's out of respect for Brandon Coleman because I really do covet him in that sort of sense. Connerly could play guard easily, but that weight is different. That 20-pound difference between him and Coleman is all the world.
No, I agree with you. I've always said this too, and just like I feel like a lot of left tackles we've seen it here, where even Eric Flowers get moved to guard, like.
Yeah,
it can work. The transition works.
Yes,
but I feel like personally, I think Coleman can be an all-world guard. I do believe that. Like I believe that to my soul. I believe he could be an all-world guard.
And one thing that we do have to acknowledge is that one of the reasons why they went with tackle, why they went with Laramie Tunsil, because last year they had to dedicate a lot of tight ends and running backs to chips, and that's what they did heavily against Myles Garrett. They were chipping him like crazy.
You have to.
And obviously that's a great thing, but Cliff is looking at this saying, I have to be able to free those guys up so we can be able to get the ball out quicker, so we can be able to hit these holes in these zones, so these teams like Philly can't sit there in their zone and we have to dedicate another guy to pass blocking because we're getting destroyed up front. And as much I love Brandon Coleman, but that one little tweak for Cliff Kingsbury is going to be all the world for him. And I think that he's right in that regard of being able to free up some of our tight ends and our running backs.
I agree. We got a comment from a man, Mike said, if B-Rob wants to stay on this team, he's going to have to punt return. You tripping? He's Ron Rivera's guy, not Quinn's guy, and they getting rid of most of Ron's picks.
So you know how they changed the kickoff rules?
Yeah,
I said in the offseason last year, if they're changing it to be like a running play, put Brian Robinson's big ass out there.
I mean, I can say
let's see who wants to tackle that dude running full speed. And he's on to something, but I think at this point, Luke McCaffrey has earned that job.
It says, is Coleman an all-pro guard? I believe he will be.
A lot of things have to happen. I mean, all-pro is obviously top of the top, right? And I truly believe in what Brandon Coleman is possibly able to do, and how he plays against the Eagles, how he plays against New York is going to go into that.
True.
But just like with Jaden Daniels, what I said with the Rookie of the Year award, team success is going to be able to blossom into individual success.
Yeah,
so let's make sure that we can run the ball fundamentally. Don't worry about being all pro or anything like that. But He has the capability to be, without a doubt. He has all the tools that he possibly needs. It's just being able to string them together, and he's got to stay healthy. You were right. He did get banged up at the end of the season. He deserves credit for that. I saw him working out before the playoff game where it looked like he was limping to the bathroom.
Yeah, he's not.
You saw that?
Yeah, he's not. He wasn't healthy at all. Like he was.
No.
I mean, I feel like if it was a regular season game, he wouldn't probably have played in the postseason.
I agree with you.
So I know coach talked about he got exposed. He said he got exposed in the postseason. He was hurt. You didn't get the best. You didn't even get the best version of him. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to like ill on a player that I've seen play better, and then he's banged up and his plays decline. And I'm gonna chalk that up to injury. I'm not gonna chalk that up to say, oh, he's declined in play. I'm gonna chalk it up to injury.
And honestly, that gained a lot more respect from me. The fact that he continued to stay in there and fight, even though he was injured. And I know that there were guys on the line that were dealing with other things as well.
Yeah.
Badass had 3 separate injuries at one point. And so, like, these guys, offensive linemen are built different. And my wife made a comment that defensive line is like offensive line and defensive line is like boring. And I was like, absolutely not. These are the best athletes on the field. They're the ones that have to go against the biggest, most athletic, and most strong guys on the field. This is where it really pays dividends for you. So it was just funny to hear her say that.
I believe Deluxe said Tunsil, Coleman, Cosme, Connerly, all tackles. That's all. Yeah, that's a good flexibility too in terms of when people go down. We even seen it here a few years ago where even Trent Williams had to move to guard. So the flexibility is definitely something that this regime definitely loves. So Kyle, what grade would you give this draft?
I think it's hard to say that now.
Yeah, I know. Definitely. I agree with you.
Immediately after, like if you would have asked me after the Emmanuel Forbes draft class, I would have said a B, right?
Yeah,
but even though I was on par with saying Christian Gonzalez is a lockdown corner. If he's there for you, you take it and you run with it. And of course, Ron didn't go down that route. But like that being said, like it's easy to say that right after the fact. But I will say the fact that Connerly should not have been there at 29, like getting the last possible player who could start at tackle in the NFL. It's hard to be able to start at tackle in the NFL. Usually, typically, what teams will do is a tackle in college will transition to guard. And then usually that's how it works.
Yep.
To get one is very hard. And what he did against the premier elite pass rushers in this league, that deserves an A. And just being able to add that, and a couple of people are putting it into a glass to be able to say, well, you drafted a tackle when you need an edge, you need a running back. That's not only it. It's the fact that you're moving Coleman inside. It's being able to compete against these other D lines. This really opens up a lot for the offense. And we talked about the chips. It frees up the chips. And so it just knocks another domino down for Cliff Kingsbury. So it has to be an A just based on what it's going to provide for you. Trey Amos should not have been there at 61, just based off his film, his measurables, his arm length. He fits the bill. He's obviously very instinctive in zone. He's handsy, physical in coverage and man coverage. And he's a pass swatting demon, man. The guy's insane. That deserves an A as well. Jalen Lane is an A+. Getting the punt returner and the possible backup to Debo, the speedster, the fast lane himself, that's an A. Kane, I'll probably give a C too, just because of the tackling. And we got to be, this can't be all fluff.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And then Ja'Cory, just in terms of like fantasy football production and everything like that, and being at the later end of the draft and be able to get somebody who could really do well for you in the future, I think that deserves a B+. So in all, I would say an A-.
A-? Yeah, I've gotten better. I was mad before I said D. I was so upset that day. I took my emotions out of it. I took my emotions out of it. I was annoyed. I'm not one of these people. I'm honest with my flaws. Like, don't get it twisted. I'm honest with my flaws.
He's only 21 too, man. He's a young kid.
Yeah, so I give it a B. I give it a B. I just felt like everything you stated in terms of the first two, and also when Lane just having a guy to me that can be dynamic on teams, I think is everything. And something you said that I stone cold agree with is it's all for Jayden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do it for Jayden. There's somebody who can give a screen pass to and take it to the house. Or any type of a 5-yard slant can take it to the house. Any type of situation where a wide receiver screen, like anything that makes Jayden's life easy, where we don't have to get those plays where we're methodical down the field. He can get the one hitters, and then it's just like that type of offense. And also, in terms of edge rushers, because I was one of the individuals who wanted an edge rusher, right?
Me too.
Somebody told. Then I had this conversation with folks from Gas Sports. Shout out to them, real cool guys. And he was talking about getting the best player available, or just getting somebody on offense. One of the guys were talking about getting somebody on offense. Bryce, my guy Bryce. And I was like, but I want defense. We gave a 55 against the Eagles. I want defense. That's my mind. But then he was like, well, he said this. He said, will the edge rusher change change the complexity or the overall ability of your defense? And I thought about it. And I was like, as the team is constructed, probably not. Like, at the end of the day, probably not. But because what they did in free agency, it doesn't. Even you add an edge rusher, unless that person is Micah Parsons or Von Miller in his prime, probably not going to change but so much. So why not get the offensive player that can help Jayden out rather than getting the player because you want an edge rusher that you just want an edge rusher because you know it's a need, but will that edge rusher really change the fortunes of your defense?
Like, I was right there with you. I was on the edge class. I did a lot of investigating into the edge class, and I thought, because the way that my mind was working is there's a plethora of guys that I know that Dan Quinn and company, they talk about this time and time again, using guys at their strengths, maximizing their strength and turning it into a superpower. And so with that in mind, you could do that with edge rusher later on in the draft, but you could not find a startable NFL tackle after round one, after Josh Connerly. Yeah. That's what made sense to me. And for me, if I were to making a sales pitch to you to say that the draft class deserves an A, what I would say is not just looking at the 5 draft picks, but look at the draft picks that they traded away. They got Laramie Tunsil.
That's a good way of looking at it.
They got Deebo Samuel, right? And those coupled in with what they've added really add some firepower to this football team, because now we're in the win now mode and that window is now open. And they're going headfirst into it. The edge rusher thing, I think the strength superpower is a legit thing. And we have to be honest. Yes, they got 11 sacks last season, or 11th in sacks last season, of course. Yeah. The leading sack guy that they had is now on Dallas.
Yes.
And they had to dedicate extra rushers to generate that pressure, typically by sending Bobby, by sending Frankie Louvu. What the Eagles did against Kansas City is what our goal is to be able to do. Rush 4, cause chaos, wreak havoc, and let your coverage guys be able to strangle them to death for the entirety of the game, which is what happened to the Chiefs. That edge rush guy would have been able to penetrate, be able to get that pressure for you to force those bad throws. But after the draft, I can understand from their mindset of saying, we're rather going for coverage sacks than speed sacks. Yeah. And that's why they went down the Trey Amos route. Yeah. That makes sense to me, to say we'd rather strangle them from the wide receiver standpoint, and our persistent rushers in Dorrance Armstrong, our persistent rusher in Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Clelin Ferrell, Wise, and then Jacob Martin, they'll be able to crush the pocket enough to be able to, if the quarterback does have to hold on to the ball, and adding Javon Kinlaw on the interior, Daron Payne and Johnny Newton, they'll be able to suffocate and be able to get those sacks if we're able to have the quarterback hold that ball just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I get it. Like I get what they did. I just feel like in the offseason, I mean, in free agency, it kind of dictated what they're going to do in the draft to me. Like, mentally, like, again, if you really wanted with the money they had available to go ahead and spend or whatever, if they really wanted to make this defense a superpower, right? Like that, the thought process was to make it a superpower. Then they went all in and trying to make it a superpower. There's no player in the draft. Like, for instance, like what makes the Eagles great is not just their defense great. It's obviously like the edge rushers they're solid, they're good, they're solid. But we all know it's the Georgia boys though. It's the Georgia boys in the inside. That
right. Like if you're an offensive coordinator, Wole, and I'm rushing 4 and I'm sitting in zone for primarily of the game. Like, let's say first quarter, what is the first play you're calling if after I run a 4 rusher and zone? What are you running at me?
If you're running zone, I'm running the ball.
Exactly.
I'm
But
running the ball.
the
Yeah.
problem is those defensive tackles are clogging up the run game so
Exactly.
much.
Exactly.
That's what the Eagles are really good at doing. And that's
Mhm,
why the Josh Connerly moving Coleman inside is forcing them out of that zone to
mhm,
add more rushers into being able to dictate. And that way you can hit the play action, have that open slot where Zach Bond's going to be now thinking it's a run play and
mhm.
being able to hit over top. Like
Yeah.
that, I agree with you. Like that's what we need to be getting towards. We should not be dedicating multiple guys, but I understand why they're doing it. I'm not going to be mad at them. They know
Yeah.
more football than I do.
Of
I get
course.
it.
Yeah. That's where after my anger, that's where I landed on. I was like, you know what? Adam Peters, you were great last year with the
Right.
drafts. I can't even. Who am I? You're better than me. You're better than me. I'm not even. I'm not you. All right, Mike. I'm gonna ask Kyle your question now. I know you was pissed off at me. I could see you in the chat. Kyle says, "Do you think we will have more O-line guys than any other position when it comes to the 51-man roster?"
Yeah, without a doubt. Just specifically by the mathematics of it, 5 positions on the offensive line, you're going to have more bodies there dedicated towards it. And that's obviously something they have been invested into this offseason. And so you'd have to imagine they're going to be very dedicated towards it, making sure that they have their backups, that they're comfortable with them. And with the injuries that we had last season, you have to be able to do your due diligence in the offensive line. I do think that they're going to have more offensive line than any other position.
All right, so real quick before we end the show off, your thoughts on the undrafted dudes? Obviously, Sean Taylor's brother.
Yep.
Your thoughts, like just in some of the guys that you were kind of like impressed with. You don't have to name all of them, just some of them.
Well, like we talked about, we kind of wanted safety to
Yeah.
look at. Like I really liked Andrew Makuba. I haven't
Mhm.
been able to watch any of Jackson State film to see Robert
I've seen him.
McDaniel.
He's nice because I do HBCU stuff. He's nice. He's
Yeah.
good. He's good. He's a playmaker. He has a good nose for the football.
And
I
just
bet
like
I'll
with
say.
Caden Medrano, I think that's somebody that if he's going to make his stay and be able to be retained on this team, he's going to have to prove himself like Tyler Owens in the special teams ability
Yeah.
and to be able to step onto the football field. Safety is something that we do have veterans in, and that there are some applications for the future if you want to stick around with this football team. And we've interviewed Anthony Armstrong a bunch of times,
Mhm.
and what he said the last time we interviewed him was these practice squad guys have no idea what an opportunity they have going against the starters. Like
Mhm.
that is your ability to prove what you're able to do. So take it seriously and do well and kick ass. And I think Robert McDaniel is somebody that you want to keep your eye on looking forward. I think the other one was like Ian McKay
Mhm.
from NC State. I think an
NC State, yeah. NC State, yep.
injury early on kind of hampered his production and stake in the draft. But that's something you got to keep your eye on as well, as to say what's going to go on in the preseason. Let's see how this young man plays, if he deserves a roster spot, because building up in the trenches and making the Hogs 2.0 is objective number 1 for this offense.
Yeah, I see. I definitely see that. So, and this is my last question. Your thoughts on the RFK? The team
Love
from the
it.
RFK. You loving it? Okay.
So it's been my number 1. Like if I had to pick a number 2, I would have said the National Harbor. Like
Yeah,
I did work for the Gaylord Hotel down there. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that area. There's
It's a nice
land
area.
there for you to work with.
Sure.
But the number 1 was RFK.
Yeah.
Just for me, like I went up when I worked for Noodles & Company. I was an assistant GM, and I went and worked at Penn State when they opened up one up there. I got lost on the highway up there. I come around the highway, and I remember seeing that stadium on top of the hill with the lights on, and it was like right at twilight. And I remember thinking, like, wow, like that is such a great view of a stadium. It's like you get the feeling of it all, like on top of the hill. It just has that kind of feeling and look to it. With FedEx, with the stadium in Landover, you don't get that feeling.
No, you don't.
Getting it at RFK with the capital there in the city, it's all there. It is all there, and it's the fan base wants it, the ownership wants it, the city wants it. It's a success for everybody involved, except for the random few that are throwing posters up around DC for some reason.
I will say this, like, I'm biased for it being here in the beginning, but now I don't really care because it's like I'm here because I live like literally like 5 minutes away from the stadium. I can
Okay.
if I wanted to walk, I can walk if I wanted to. But on the flip side, like I grew up with this team in RFK. That's all I knew growing up. So like for that team to be back at RFK, it's what I always wanted to be honest. Even it being local for me, like I've always wanted this team at RFK. But go ahead.
I've had a different come up with RFK than you. Like with my RFK come up, because I was born in 90, I'm 35.
Okay.
So I was going to RFK for DC United games. And then when I was playing baseball in high school, we got tickets for the Nationals when they were playing at RFK.
Yeah.
Like with Alfonso Soriano, Vladimir Guerrero. Like that was when I was started watching the Nats and at RFK. So like even being there though, like when you get off the metro there, like you feel the atmosphere. I'll never forget showing up to DC United games. You're hearing the loud music, the speakers going on in the streets. It is such a great atmosphere in that area, man. And it's a slam dunk for everybody involved.
I mean, it's going to be awesome. And this is the thing though, like it's happening at the right time. And what I mean by it is like it's going to be rocking even more. You know what I mean? Because of the excitement of Jaden Daniels and what this team could be down the road, right? But also all I wanted for this team after a certain portion of being a fan of the squad is just to be consistent and win games. And I felt like you see it here, like when this team wins, it don't matter where you play at. You know what I mean? Like the fans show out. You know what I mean? It sucks that the former owner kind of made it for what it is today. You know, well, not today, but what it was in the past, right? So they're giving us a winner. So I feel like for the players and the coaches and the staff, like I feel like it's more of, and for us as fans, obviously it's cool for us. It's a blessing for us. But I think for the players and the coaches, it's going to be dope for them to go into an environment like that. You know what I mean? Because back in the day, that type of, you hear old players talk about it, but growing up, watching it on TV, growing up and being at games and whatnot, like, that environment was just different. You know what I mean? And I just feel like you don't lose that type of aura, that type of vibe, just because you've been gone for so many years. Once you go back, those fans and some of those parents, and those when they were little kids going to the games, they're gonna come back older, elderly or whatever. But they're gonna give you that vibe and that whole feel. So I just think, like, when it's done and built, it's gonna be amazing. And we're gonna get a Super Bowl II here eventually down the road. You can't beat it.
No, and like you're meeting the new age with the old age,
exactly,
right? And
exactly.
It's a perfect combination of the two. And this football team has the sky's the limit right now. And as they go as far as Jaden will be able to take them. And I'll say this: what he needs to work on is staying healthy.
Yep.
Because I want him to break that Brett Favre consecutive game record. I would love to be able to see him be able to do that, and that's what really is going to help this football team in the long run. But we are in a very special place right now.
Yes.
And 30 years of being a speed bump, 30 years of being the laughing stock of the league. Well, now let's look for 30 years of dominance. Because let's build a freaking juggernaut, dude. I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of being laughed at. Let's go make some noise.
I'm with that. We're gonna end it on that because that's a great way to end it. Before we do end, I want you to kind of plug your stuff again. You got to plug. I'm sorry.
You're good. You can find me. You can find me on X at the Burgundy Zone or the Podfather if you want to put that in there. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram as well, and then obviously YouTube, Spotify, Google Pods, Apple Pods, all that jazz. You can just search for it in there, and you'll see my ugly mug.
Nah, man, I ain't gonna lie to you. I've always loved the name the Podfather. Anytime I call you, when I see it, I'm like, I like that's a dope name. That's a dope.
It was it was given to me by Burroughs and Freddie Ham. They're the ones that we were doing a pod one day, and that's because I was helping a lot of people get their pods started. Just by being somebody that if you wanted to talk to, just in sense of what get going. And what I've told everyone: when you start a pod, don't look at the views. Do not look at the views. It shouldn't matter to you because at the end of the day, what's going to keep you going is just loving to do it.
There you go.
And so that's what they gave me that as a play on words. And I felt like that was very honorable of them to do to me. So I've always kept that nickname.
I love it. I love it. As a dude who likes mafia stuff, I love that. I love that. I'm not gonna lie to you. Just it is what it is. It works for me. I was like, oh, Podfather. I was like, okay, that's a bar. All right. I appreciate everybody for tuning in the chat. My man Paul, thank you. Who said that? I want to make sure I give y'all flowers.
And Wole, real quick, I just want to say, man, thank you for inviting me on here, man. This was a blast. I had a really good time, dude.
Kyle, you're my guy. Like, you're gonna come on. You don't got to worry. Kyle, you're my guy.
I remember that Alex Smith prediction, bro. You know your stuff.
Oh yeah, I did. I forgot about the Alex Smith prediction. Yeah,
you did.
That worked. There's some
That'd be
bias.
work.
There's some bias. Alex. There's the bias for Alex Smith too. That kind of part too. Anyway, man, I appreciate Kyle for being on. I appreciate everybody who chimed in the chat. I appreciate Deluxe. I appreciate Paul, my man Mike. You know, you trying to hate on me, Mike. You trying to give me a hard time. I still appreciate you. and Paul's giving you your love too, man. Kyle, great job. We'll be following you. Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
I appreciate you. Anyway, y'all been listening to the Urban Sports Scene for ages. You dig? Deuces. We are out.
Peace.